Welcome to Ryan's Running Reviews in partnership with Roadrunner Sports, and today we're taking a look at two fast daily trainers. We have the ASICS Magic Speed 3 and the brand new HOKA Mach X. But let's run with it. Now, before we get started, I do want to say these shoes were provided to me by Roadrunner Sports. However, no one had a chance to preview this video, and this file synopsis is my own. I'd also like to say please leave a like on the video and consider subscribing. Here we go. Both the Magic Speed 3 and the Mach X are fast daily trainers or potential race day shoes for some runners. They provide a very different experience, but I thought it'd be fun to compare them since they fall into this rather unique category. And if you're someone who doesn't want to spend $200+ on a super shoe, I think these are solid options. So let's get into it. As far as price goes, the Magic Speed is going to be a little bit cheaper at $160, while the Mach X comes in at $180, so just about 20 bucks more. However, when it comes to weight, the Magic Speed 3 is going to be significantly lighter, coming in at 7.8 ounces, which is very good for a shoe in this category. It's rather light. On the other hand, or other foot, I should say, the Mach X comes in at 9.1, which is good for most daily trainers, but rather heavy for this particular subset of fast running shoes. And even though the Mach X is significantly heavier, they do give you a bit more cushioning underfoot. I will say, as far as the stats go, it's a little bit hard to compare them directly because Hoka gave all their stack height measurements for a men's size 10, and for ASICS, it was for a men's size 9. So take this with a grain of salt, but at least according to Hoka, we have 39 in the heel, 34 in the forefoot for a lower 5mm drop, while the Magic Speed 3 has 36 in the heel and 29 in the forefoot for a 7mm drop. So you do get a bit more cushioning overall here, and even more under the forefoot with the Mach X, since it has that lower 5mm drop compared to the Magic Speed's 7mm drop. Moving on to the uppers, while they both worked quite well, they are very different. For the Magic Speed, we have a very minimal upper here. In fact, it's almost identical to what we see on ASICS super shoes like the METASPEED Sky Plus. It's incredibly breathable. You can see directly into the shoe itself as this very fine engineered mesh with heavy lines of stitching to give it support. I think it works quite well, but because it has this race-like upper, it also has kind of a race-like fit. It's going to be rather narrow and rather snug. I do recommend maybe going up about half a size if you want a bit more wiggle room. But other than that, it fits quite well and is extremely breathable. The tongue is also incredibly minimal. You just have a very thin layer of fabric. There's no padding or anything like that. It gives you kind of that true race day feel. It is gusseted with strips of fabric on the lateral or medial side to keep it in place. The Mach X has a much more traditional fit and feel to it. I was able to go true to size, kind of has a similar upper vibe compared to something like the Hoka Clifton, so kind of a more classic daily trainer upper, if you will. Has a Creel jacquard mesh, and all that means is it's a very thin layer with a couple different components all fused together. I think it works quite well. It is very breathable, just not as breathable and as minimal compared to the extremely thin engineered mesh we see on the Magic Speed. But other than that, I was quite happy with it, and for me, I kind of liked a little bit more volume, so I kind of leaned more towards the Mach X upper just because I found it to be a bit more comfortable. I feel like I had to kind of squeeze into the Magic Speed, and I do wish I kind of could have gone up about half a size. The Mach X does have a gusseted tongue with pieces of material on both sides to keep it in place, and the tongue itself is incredibly thin with a small piece of felt at the top. However, Hoka decided to add a foam block down the center to help prevent lace pressure. I'm a big fan of this. I think it works quite well. It's just basically putting padding where you need it and nowhere else. I will say I didn't have that issue on the Magic Speed, I think just because the overall fit was so snug, so I didn't need to pull the laces that tight, but I did find it to be quite helpful here on the Mach X, and I think it's a kind of a nice balance. You don't make this super plush tongue where you have padding where you don't need it, and just put it right beneath the laces to help kind of keep the laces from interacting directly with your foot, and I think it accomplished its goal perfectly here. Moving on to the midsole, and while they do roughly fit into the same category, they do have some clear differences. There's a lot to talk about here, so let's get into it. The Magic Speed has 2 layers of foam. They're both Flight Foam Blast Plus. I believe last year it was just 1 layer. So they made the entire midsole the same kind of foam, which I'm happy to see. Now, in between these 2 layers is a carbon fiber plate, which really does stiffen up this shoe and makes it extremely aggressive, especially for this kind of hybrid trainer race day shoe. I think it's quite interesting that this is almost a super shoe for $160. The only thing that separates it from the METASPEED Sky and Edge Plus, which are well over $200, is the midsole foam. Those other true super shoes have Flight Foam Blast Turbo. Well, again, this has Flight Foam Blast Plus. So is the manufacturing method that much more expensive to charge quite a bit more compared to the Magic Speed 3? I would love to know. But otherwise, this is pretty much a super shoe just with Flight Foam Blast Plus, which again, I think works quite well. The Mach X is a bit more complicated in the midsole. We have a dual density approach. The top layer is a PEBA foam, very soft, very bouncy, much softer compared to the FF Blast Plus on the Magic Speed. And then underneath that, we have an EVA foam kind of frame, if you will. It kind of wrangles in that softer foam that sits directly on top, helps give it a little bit of stability. And then in between those two layers of foam, we have a P-Bax plate. You can basically see it here in the middle. And this is a little bit more forgiving compared to the carbon fiber plate we see on the Magic Speed, so it's a little bit less aggressive. When it comes down to it, the Mach X feels much more like a daily trainer, while the Magic Speed kind of feels a bit more like a race shoe. They each have their own strengths and weaknesses. For example, I think the Mach X lends itself to being the more versatile option, does a better job of handling a wider variety of runs, partly because you just have a little bit more to the midsole, and that PEBA foam, especially in the forefoot, is noticeably softer and bouncier compared to the Flight Foam Blast Plus we see in the Magic Speed, which feels a little bit firm in comparison. I'll also say the Mach X is a little bit more manageable and accommodating because you have the upper with just a more traditional fit and the stability of the EVA foam frame that comes a little bit up on the lateral side and medial side as well to make that soft PEBA foam a little bit more manageable. The Magic Speed 3 is absolutely the faster shoe, has a higher kind of top speed, if you will. Now, this is for a couple different reasons. One, it's over an ounce less compared to the Mach X, absolutely blows it out of the water when it comes to weight. Also has a more noticeable rocker geometry. The toe spring is significantly greater, and then you pair that with the stiffer or more rigid carbon fiber plate, and this thing just rolls you much quicker compared to the Mach X with its P-Bax plate, which is less stiff. So when it comes down to it, Magic Speed 3, much quicker. Mach X, a little bit more versatile, more daily trainer-esque, but also quite quick, just not as quick as the Magic Speed. And yes, there is overlap for those faster daily training runs, just kind of comes down to the experience that you want. A slightly firmer, slightly more aggressive, lighter package here with the Magic Speed, or something a bit more cushiony, a bit more bouncing, and a little bit more forgiving here with the Mach X. They're both fast shoes. Yes, the ASICS model is a little bit quicker, but it just kind of comes down to what running you're looking to do. Moving on to the outsole, of course, they got to show off their plates. The P-Bax plate, the carbon plate, got the little window into the sole, if you will. As far as the traction goes, feels very much more like a racing shoe, very smooth, solid amount of rubber coverage, which I think makes sense for a daily trainer. Durability should be solid, but no traction issues, and I think it worked quite well. I'm happy to see they left this much rubber on for this kind of hybrid fast trainer / race day shoe. So let me know down in the comments what you think of these two models. Which one do you want to go with, or which one do you think is just better overall? I would love to hear from you. Well, I'm Ryan from Ryan's Running Reviews, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks.